sei qui con me. Questa stanza non ha più pareti, ma alberi.
Buongiorno. Thank you for having me. I'm very, very honored to be here. Larry Rosenstock is my partner in life and work. And unfortunately, he was not well enough to be here. So the first idea was that we would both be here. But thank you, Alessandra, for that amazing intro. I guess I should still stand up. I want to tell you a little bit about, you heard a little bit about the founding story of High Tech High, and I want to tell you a little bit about the difficulties, because it wasn't just a walk in the park. So Larry, this is maybe 30 years ago, Larry found himself teaching vocational education in the basement. He was teaching carpentry. He had a friend, Rob Reardon, who was teaching in the college track on the 5th floor, teaching literature and writing. And their students, although they were in the same school and they walked in the same door, they couldn't have been more different. This was in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So the ones on the top floor were the sons and daughters of professors or professionals or business owners. And the ones that Larry was teaching carpentry were the working class, often immigrants, often students of color. In Cambridge, there's lots of white working class students as well there. And so Larry and Rob got together and they thought, this is just crazy in this day and age that we have our students so segregated. We have students going to college who really could use technical skills and career-oriented learning and working with their hands. And then we have these kind of undiscovered intellects in the carpentry studio who maybe they couldn't sit still in a desk, or maybe they had difficulty reading, they were dyslexic, and they essentially got dumped into vocational education, but they were smart kids. So they set out to try to revolutionize the vocational school. And they set out to try to invite all the college track kids to come and take classes and work in teams with the vocational educational students. And they were able to do it for a few short years. And you would think Cambridge is a very liberal city, Harvard is a progressive university. You would think that it would have been a good place to have an experiment in equity and integration, but it was shut down at every turn. So eventually they both left, and they did get this federal grant that allowed them to go around the country and look at what they thought were the best practices of schools that were merging technical education with academic education. And they found many promising examples. By a series of quirks, Larry and I ended up in San Diego, and that is the place where he met a group of high-tech entrepreneurs who were very concerned about the supply of students who had any basic STEM learning. They were very concerned about what the schools were doing at that time. And so their concept was to try to create a school that would serve a very diverse group of students in a non-segregated way, in a completely integrated way, and would integrate academic and technical learning. And I think the actors were right that even though the name is High Tech High, it feels more like a makerspace or an art school. Oh, I can sit if I adjust the mic. Thank you for my note. So this is all to say that making change is not without its challenges. And I found myself feeling quite unlucky to be here after David Price, who is a dear friend, because he's already named me and High Tech High as a beautiful exception. But then I had lunch with Steve, who is creating another beautiful exception in Barcelona, who you're going to hear from later. And he said, we have a different name for it, and it's the future mainstream. So let's hope that's true. So we actually concluded 20 years at High Tech High. And as the video said and the actors said, it started with one high school. Then I worked in an primary school that we merged in. And then there was a great demand for this kind of education. So we created more and more schools, ultimately got to have 16 schools, all within the Southern California region. And we also created a graduate school of education, at teacher training and at training for leaders. And we attracted many people. Some of you here may have been to visit High Tech High. So many people wanted to come and visit. And for 20 years, the question we heard most often is, can we have your curriculum? The problem was we did not have a curriculum. Teachers created their own projects based on their passions and their students' interests. So we got asked this question over and over and over again, and we didn't have anything to offer. All we could say is, come see us. But we finally decided that we would ask all of the teachers about what their best projects were, and that we would curate them and put them together into a book. So I'm going to share some of those projects with you today. And this book came out just a little bit less than a year ago, and I sent a copy to Alessandra, and she has actually, through a process, a group process with teachers and students, there is now an Italian translation of this book. So I hope you will all, after I show you a little bit about it. Oh, you want to take a picture? This is just an amazing feat. Thank you so much. I feel so honored and thrilled that this is translated into Italian. It's also being translated into Mandarin right now, and it's also being translated into Spanish. So hopefully it will go far and wide. So we sent out a call to hundreds of teachers now with 16 schools, and we've been in existence for 20 years. We have many teachers, hundreds of teachers, and we have teachers that have been with us and that have also gone on to be leaders in other schools, to start other schools. So we reached out to everybody we could find to ask them what they felt were their most inspiring and replicable projects. So we got hundreds of nominations, which I have to say, we started this project right around March 2020. And it was really helped me personally survive the lockdown period, because it gave me hope that there was going to be this kind of engaged, fun, and deep learning sometime in the future. It was going to reemerge. So anyway, we got all these, my co-author, Jeff Robin, who's an art teacher, and I got all these hundreds of nominations, and we curated them down to the ones that we thought would be the best ones. And then we had the problem of, how are we going to categorize these projects? Because they were all the way from kindergarten to 12th grade. Some were STEM projects, some were literacy projects, some were science projects. So we didn't want to do it by subject, because the main thing about all of these projects, as you'll soon see, is that there's multiple subjects integrated usually in one project, which is honestly the way we live our life. Every project that we do has It has critical thinking. If you write a book, you need literacy, you need research, you need critical thinking, you need art skills, you need technical skills. So it's, you know, if you make a movie, write a book, build a house, you need to integrate everything that you possibly can into what your project is. And it's just kind of strange that we don't teach our students that way. For our students, we just isolate everything and keep it very separate and make them listen to bells 7 times a day and go from one to the other, and nothing relates to each other. So anyway, we're trying to figure out how we categorize this. We also didn't want to do it by grade level, because many of the projects, we hope you can take a project that was done here by 16-year-olds and you can certainly adapt it to 10-year-olds or 7-year-olds. It should be very easy. So we were looking at some of our favorite quotes. One of them is from Paulo Freire many, many years ago that proves David Price's quote that the more things change, the more they stay the same. Anyway, Freire's, one of his most famous quotes about learning is that knowledge emerges only through invention and reinvention, through the relentless, impatient, continuing, hopeful inquiry human beings pursue in the world, and with each other. And so we had a kind of aha moment. We said, you know what? This is how these projects will divide themselves. Some of them are about invention and reinvention. They're about making, those are the maker projects. That's rocketry and sending up hot air balloons and building robots. This is making something new in the world that wasn't there before, which is one of the most satisfying things any of us can possibly do. Another category is this human inquiry in the world and with the world. And these are projects which I'm sure many of you have done similar. You could also call them community service projects. It's when students get the opportunity to go out in the world and either interview people or study a problem in their community, and they take that back and apply their critical thinking to it and provide some kind of service based on the needs that they analyzed. And then the final category is with each other. And those are projects that I might call identity projects, that we have a lot of projects in here. I realized that our students are doing family histories, or they're interviewing an immigrant and their family about what their experience was, or they're analyzing their biases and trying to change them. So those became our way of thinking about the different projects. So I'm going to share just a few of them with you, and then hopefully we can have questions. This project was done with 13-year-olds, and it was a math and an engineering teacher. The math teacher, Mark Schulman, was in an airport, and he saw this incredible sculpture that was moving. It had marbles rolling down and moving parts. And his daughter, who was having a tantrum, stopped crying when she saw this. So he said, I think I can use this to teach about the velocity. I think I can use this. Let's see, what were his learning goals? He could use this to understand acceleration and velocity and energy conservation, and for his students to develop engineering design skills. And so they took on a project in which they combined creating these beautiful structures and learning all of the underlying math and physics. And my co-author, Jeff, is kind of a wise guy. And he said, we had to include this picture because it looks like a drug lab. So he says, you know, there's tin foil, there's people with masks on, you know, it could be anything in there. But it's not. They're learning how to solder. And actually, this was a great exhibition, the final exhibition, which in each one of these, as you'll see, if you see the Italian version, we talk about the inspiration for the project. We talk about the learning goals, the launch, how they started it off and captured the students' interests, how the learning was assessed. And then all of our projects have a public exhibition, which is a really important part of our culture, and it invites the community and the families in to see the final product. Anyway, this exhibition was a great one because they kind of did a process exhibition and a teaching one. So if you know the way you go in a science museum and you can do these interactive things, it was like that. And they were teaching all of the participants about the laws of physics, and they were also taught them how to solder metal and make these things. So it was fantastic. This is a project that my co-author Jeff did with his partner, who is a physics teacher. And they decided to use something really commonplace and look at all of the math and the artistry that they possibly could within that very commonplace item. So here are some parts of the project. They first made these scale models of really crazy staircases. Then they had to do a poster that they explained the math. Then they made their own gigantic staircases, which still are there in our school and are much enjoyed. There's one thing I wanted to say about this, which is maybe hard to see, but this last thing is called the rebels among us. So it talks about how in every project, there are some of the students who want to go a different way. And Jeff wanted me to show that these girls did not want to make a staircase. They wanted to make something else. And so the two teachers said, okay, here are the learning goals, and here is what we want from you, and you take it the way you want to. You can make whatever you want. So they made this geodesic dome to hang out in, which we then asked them to recreate for my primary school, because the young kids wanted one so much like it. Okay, the next category, oh my God, only 5 minutes. I'll be very fast. The next category is in the world with the world. So this is an amazing project that was done with secondary school students. As you know, in the United States, we have the death penalty. We have a huge number of people who are in jail unjustly because we have a great theoretical justice system, but we don't, in practice, it's not very fair. This teacher made a connection with something called the Innocence Project, which for the last 20 years has been taking on pro bono clients who are in jail, who feel they have been unjustly convicted, and they take them on if their cases seem promising, and they have overturned hundreds and thousands of cases. So we have a California Innocence Project, mostly law students who are post-college are the ones who are volunteering, but they allowed our students, they're all volunteer. And so they just get thousands of letters from people who are in jail explaining their case, and they have no way to go through them. So our students actually, meanwhile, they were reading some books like by Just Mercy, books about the criminal justice system in the United States. And they were analyzing these real life people's cases and looking at their court records, looking at all of the background information. And their final exhibition was their presentation to the Innocence Project to recommend whether they should take the case on or not. So it was incredibly impactful because the students were doing something that actually could affect somebody else's life. This is a wonderful community service project where students went out to a veterans home where veterans who had no other place to live were able to live there, and they in their classroom, they were studying ancient Greek epic poems about heroes, and then they were interviewing the veterans about these momentous times in their life. And their final work was they created a poem and a painting, and they presented it to the veteran. Okay, I'm speeding through here. This project reminded me of the way David was talking about all of the learning that he had from going through this process of navigating the Ukrainian refugee system. This was a project from some years ago when we had many, many Syrian refugees. And this teacher set out to work with his students, and the students decided that they wanted to create a role-playing game. So they essentially did a simulation. They read lots of refugee stories, and they researched all the different places that would be the most common places that and situations that a refugee would have to go through. And they each took on roles. And this was essentially, you can see, border official, journalist, medical examiner, smuggler. They invited other students and other community members to go through this simulation experience so that they could learn what it was like to go on this refugee journey. This is a final project, which is basically a partnership between older students and younger students, where the older students were learning what the process of learning to read is like, and what the process of learning to love to read is like. And they were also in their own literature class, and they met with the younger students multiple times. And then in the end, they actually wrote a full-length novel, a youth novel that was essentially directed to their reading buddy that they had. So I leave you with just a taste. We have 50 more projects in here. I hope you will look at them. I hope you will take them into your own community and try something similar or try something different, but possibly inspired by this. I think in not having a curriculum, one of the things we wanted to be clear about here is that this is not a how-to book. We never would be so arrogant as to say, this is how you do it. All we want to say is, this is how we did it. And if it can help you, that's amazing. And one other thing I want to say, because all of you are teachers, these are beautiful projects, and there is a lot of structural change that has to happen in our schools before you can do projects like this and successfully integrate all of your academic subjects. You know, you need to have time for teachers to collaborate and plan collectively. You need to have a schedule that allows a humanities teacher and a science teacher, if they want to create a project together, they have to be able to have the same kids at the same time. These are all things that require leadership, and they require consensus. They require a lot of work. So I don't want you to think that I'm saying, hey, try this, without understanding how many challenges there are. And I'm going to leave you with one quote from Larry, since he couldn't be here. I was really inspired by, was it Julia this morning, who was talking about all the artificial intelligence and all the projects. And then she was talking about women going into STEM careers. And I feel like both girls and boys would be more likely to go into STEM careers if we were tackling projects like that she showed us. You know, if instead of reading from a textbook and memorizing, you know, the constructs of different molecules, you could actually go to the water and test the water quality and think of a way that you could, you know, improve the water quality and make some kind of collective effort in your community. I mean, these are things that would make people want to be biologists much more than the standard way that we teach biology. So my final quote from Larry is this: we have two poles of our world that are melting. We have water that is rising. We have pandemics. We have war. We have racism. We have gender inequality. We have so many challenges that our young people, they are dying to sink their teeth, and they are going to be the ones who are going to change these challenges. Isn't it time that we unleash them? And instead of marching them through history, math, science, English, that we allow them to really engage with the real problems of the world, because they are the ones that are going to solve them. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry I went over.